Thus saith the Lord, go and smite Amalek, utterly destroy all that they have. Spare them not, slay both man and woman, infant and suckling, ox and sheep, camel and donkey. So genocide, then. Genocide is what we're talking about. Hey, if you think that this is the good book or that the God inside of it is a good person, then call the show because it starts right now. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Atheist Experience. I'm your host, Forrest Valkai, and joined today is the incomparable, the dashing, the glorious, the amazing Seth Andrews. How are you today, my friend?
I'm well, and I heard your show intro, and I just want you to know that I'm uncomfortable by the word suckling. Always have been. I don't know why.
It's not a great word. This version has the weirdest language in it. I think this is King James. I don't know. I picked that one in particular because that's 1 Samuel 15. And this is where God tells Samuel to go, tells Saul to go slaughter the Amalekites and every man, woman, and baby among them. And then he doesn't. Saul actually saves a few of the livestock as like spoils of war to feed his people. And then also I think he takes the king as a political prisoner. And God says that he regrets choosing Saul as a leader. So God can regret things, apparently. He can make mistakes. And then as punishment, he strips Saul of all of his ranks and titles, sends demons to harass him and drive him insane, appoints David as the next king, and David commits all the genocide that he was supposed to. And then at the end of 2 Samuel, Saul dies 4 different ways, or I guess throughout this. He kills himself, and then in another part, the Amalekites kill him, and then in another part, the Philistines kill him, and then in another part, God kills him. And so he dies over and over again, and all sorts of. It's just a wild ride, this part of this book, man.
And you brought up a great point too, because we see throughout the Old Testament, especially, but God being surprised, the God who knows everything, past, present, and future. And then something happens. And I think the best examples of this, we cover some of this in a couple of audiobooks that I have narrated for Dr. Joshua Bowen. He's written some books called The Atheist Handbook to the Old Testament. One of the things he does at the beginning of the books is he lays out the first few books of the Bible in story form. So instead of having to go through the begats and all that stuff, he actually just tells the story. So-and-so went here and this happened. And when you read it in that way, and I noticed when I was narrating for Audible, that the first 5 books of the Bible, at least, can be summed up like this. Yahweh says, do not do the thing. And the Israelites say, we shall not do the thing. Then the Israelites do the thing. Mm-hmm. Yahweh looks down and says, hey, you have just done the thing. I shall smite thee. And God's angry because he is surprised. He didn't expect this. Then the Israelites look up, oh, we are so sorry. Please stop smiting us. We will no longer do the thing. And then they stop, and all is good for about 5 minutes until the next thing that comes along. And this is the first, it's really the first third of the Old Testament. When you read it like that, it is an unintentional comedy for the whole family. I'm just saying.
What kills me is the whole book of Judges is just over and over. In Exodus, God takes the Israelites out of slavery and in the dumbest way possible. But now they're not slaves anymore. Wow. And then the whole book of Judges is what you just said, only the punishment every single time is he delivers them to new slavers. He gives them back to new captors who treat them like crap. And then he has to free them again. And then he's like, all right, you better behave. And they're like, okay. And then they don't. And then he makes them slaves again and again. Everybody should read this book. Everybody should read this book.
One of my favorite parts too, the Israelites being so directionally challenged that they spend 40 years wandering an area about the size of a wildlife preserve. I'm just saying, right? And they're like, well, where the hell is the fence of this place? We can't get out of here 40 years later. It's just pathetic. And wild. I thought about putting together something. People ask, are you going to write another book? And I'm done with books for a while. I'm busy producing other things, but I thought, wouldn't it be fun to tackle the Bible in a story format. And it's been done before, but I feel like I could add something to it where we tell the story in that way with a little bit of with a lot of sarcasm.
I mean,
but actually say, well, this shit's in the Bible.
Yeah.
But I'm going to tell the story in modern day language in a way that really helps to expose how insane it really is. And it's kind of fun to listen to. That's a big project, right? 66 Bible books. But I've been thinking about it. So we shall see. Maybe.
Absolutely. Before we go any further, really quickly, I got to let everybody know that the Atheist Experience is a product of the Atheist Community of Austin, which is a 501c3 nonprofit organization dedicated to the promotion of atheism, critical thinking, secular humanism, and the separation of religion and government. And before we actually begin the show, we're doing this new thing, this question of the week, sort of a share your ideas and experience and whatnot. We wanted to give you a list of the last week's results of the share your experience question. We asked you last week, what is the best verse villains edition? And this is the answers that we got. We got from the book of Job, Holy Text Villains Edition, Jeremiah 19:9, and I will cause them to eat the flesh of their sons and the flesh of their daughters, and they shall they shall eat every one of the flesh of their friend, and siege and straightness wherewith their enemies they shall seek their lives, shall straighten them. This is difficult to read even when it makes sense. Oh my glob. Number 2, we got from Elliot Ferguson, Bible villain version, Genesis 2:17. But you must not eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, for when you eat from it, you shall surely die. A, this did not happen. B, this states that God made a choice for us to not know good and evil. And C, did not want us to acquire this knowledge. I always point out that this is the first lie ever told in existence. He makes the whole universe and makes people, and this is the first lie in history. He tells the people that if they eat from this tree, they'll die. And the first truth that's told after this, the first justice that's done in this way, comes from the serpent. All the serpent says, if you read it, it doesn't say you should try to eat this fruit. All the serpent says is, if you eat it, you won't die, you will live. The serpent tells the truth. That's all it does. And
that's
then
part of the story, though, is when Yahweh is actually looking around the garden for his disobedient kids. Like omniscient God is like looking around the trees going, where the fuck did they go?
Where am I going? What's happening? Put the bottle down, God. Take care of your children. And then number 1 comes from Kizzy0975. My first thought of the best villain was, thou shalt not suffer a witch to live, from Exodus 22:18. I accidentally said lich, and that's true. Don't suffer a lich to live. They're terrifying creatures. We have a new suggestion for this week, a new question for you to share. And Seth, I'm going to let you be the first to answer this as well. The question is, change one word or phrase of any Bible verse to completely change its meaning. That's the question. Do you have one that you want to throw out just off the top of your head?
Yeah, well, I knew it was coming, so I kind of prepared one, especially given the headlines, which we can talk about.
This is totally fresh off the top of his noggin.
It's off the top of my head, which I prepared 20 minutes ago. But it's that verse threatening what may happen, the potential future judgment of the Israelites, right? Because they're going to, if you don't do the thing, and he knows they're going to do the thing. But I've changed out the word flesh in the verse. So I will read it. My version says, you shall eat the Cracker Barrel all-day pancake breakfast of your sons, and you shall eat the Cracker Barrel all-day pancake breakfast of your daughters.
This is finally instead of God I can get behind.
I'm just saying, with that. Because he was saying you will eat the flesh of your sons and daughters. But I think the Cracker Barrel all-day pancake breakfast really does sound much more appealing. And I think it reduces the incentive to obey Yahweh. I think disobedience means you're going to have the good stuff with the warm molasses type syrup on top. Yeah.
I can get behind these commandments finally. This sounds great.
For those who don't know what we're talking about, can we give just a quick just real
about
fast
the tragedy of Cracker Barrel?
So Bud Light, of course, has been in the headlines because Bud Light had a trans influencer. And all the people who have been calling the rest of his snowflakes have lost their minds. And they're shooting cans with AR-15s and they're ripping Bud Light off of store shelves. And it's all a holy war.
by the way. They
after
buy
they bought it,
give the company money, and then they go and buy Coors instead, who also is very active in Pride.
And then country legend Garth Brooks, who is an Oklahoman. And I don't follow country music, but I just love the guy and I love his heart. He's opening a new restaurant, and he said, we're going to serve all brands of beer, including Bud Light. Love is love. Everybody come here, and you are welcome, and you're safe, and we just love people. And he just really took the high road. People are losing their minds over that. And then Cracker Barrel, which is, for those who don't know, how would I describe it, Forrest? It's just this kind of like old school country mom and pop kind of a restaurant.
It's a restaurant that tries very hard to feel like your grandma's porch out in the plains, where you can buy wooden toys and eat okay food. And it's for a long time, the joke has been that it's where, you know, racists and old people go to munch, to graze, to feed. And like now they've come out and said everybody's welcome here too, and they put out several Pride logos, and I think you said something about rainbow chairs or something.
Well, one thing about Cracker Barrel, they have, first of all, one of the big attractions is they have a major gift shop with all these like handcrafted, like homemade jams and you know, flavored popcorns and whatnot, and that's part of the charm of this place. And they also have these wood rocking chairs, these like hand carved wooden rocking chairs on the porch, this long ass porch at the front of the restaurant, and they sell them. And so they had a rainbow, like colored, painted rocking chair, and this beautiful message that said, hey, everybody's welcome, you know, come and sit with us. And what was the message that went out? How did it read for us?
Oh my gosh. No, we were laughing at this before the show. Let me pull it up really quick. So it was this thing on Twitter, where this group called the Texas Family Project posted, we take no pleasure in reporting that Cracker Barrel has fallen.
Yes. Yes.
And the responses have been absolutely beautiful, because so many people are writing in like these Civil War letters back home. Like, dearest Abigail, it is with great sorrow that I bring more terrible news from the front. Cracker Barrel has fallen. There are rainbows everywhere and nothing but dry rations to sustain us. It's just so good, too.
I think humor is probably the best way to deal with this stuff. Just, you know, you demonstrate the absurdity by being absurd, right? And you can always count on the internet. You know, you can always count on the internet. Give them 5 minutes and people will find the humor in it and find a way to sort of poke back. It's awesome.
It's so good, and it kills me that like you point out, you draw the distinction, but there's a fly in here and I'm gonna lose my mind. You were pointing out the distinction of, you know, these people that call us snowflakes, talking about this stuff and how absurd that is. You know, just today I was seeing these a news report of this woman, and of course this is, you know, anecdotal, but this is woman who's going out and like defacing these murals, these businesses around her town. They have these murals that say, you know, love is love, or that everyone all is welcome, or whatever like that. And she's writing on them, destroying them, writing, you know, Jesus is coming back and stop this Matt and all this stuff. It's like, you like a thing that I don't like, so I'm going to destroy it by plastering my ideology on it. And I guarantee the next thing out of her mouth is, well, this agenda is being pushed on me. And I can't have that. And it's like, are you not seeing this? Really? The one side is, we need to eradicate this ideology. We need to eradicate trans people and stop the gays and the this and that. All the same arguments back when we were talking about gay marriage. Oh, they're pedophiles and they're groomers and all this stuff. And on the other side is just, people can exist. You're allowed to exist, and like that's the controversial take of the century that we're having to argue. Really?
I think, you know, the people who have anointed themselves these usually Bible-based crusaders, right? They're first of all, they're primed by a culture that it's holy war. Everything from teaching the young children songs like "I'm in the Lord's army," you know, I'm marching. They actually, when I was a kid, I was a Christian kid, they had us marching in place, and I remember all the Christian songs about, you know, this means war and the battle belongs to the Lord and onward Christian soldiers. This sort of militarized language that primes people to go out and declare war on their fellow human beings. I phrase it like this when Natalie and I have been talking about it. There are just a lot of people who simply don't want to share this world. How tragic is that? They just don't want to share this world. And it hurts my heart to see it happen. And more, I see the temperature of this going up. You know, you've got at the White House this big celebration of all human beings across the spectrum, the rainbow of humanity for Pride yesterday. And then at the same time, there was a group of white supremacists waving their banners in front of the entrance of Disney, screaming out racial slurs and hate and bigotry. And it's just such a perilous time. Do you wake up in the morning and log on to the world and I mean, do you find yourself like strapping in, like, here we go, what's going to happen next?
All the time, dude.
Yeah.
It's hard. It's like it really is. It's that constant comedy of like, well, I mean, this is as worse as it'll get, and then it gets worse, and like it just over and over. And that's why we do things like this, because I think the only way I actually, unlike people like Musk who joke about it, I actually am big on free speech, and I think that like the idea of the best way to challenge that kind of stupidity and insanity is to spread some logic and reason and talk a little bit differently and kind of share just the absurd, like you said, laughing at it really helps, helps you not lose your mind, but then also just trying to share the opposite end of it, which is literally just, number one, science isn't on your side, and number two, Nazis actually are on your side, so maybe you should think about changing sides. I see that meme going around where they take like the progress flag and they post it several times and make a swastika. It's like, okay, cool, you photoshopped a flag, however actual Nazis are on the side that you're talking about here. And like, I'm not saying that automatically means you're absolutely always wrong. If Hitler said 2 + 2 is 4, I'd agree. But like at the end of the day, that should make you reevaluate your position a little bit. You know what I mean?
Well, and the Bible is often pitched as a unity book. And I've interviewed, in fact, I am releasing an interview in about a little under 2 weeks with Amanda Tyler, who is a lovely, just an absolute stellar human being and my ally in the fight against Christian nationalism. Yet she is a devout Baptist. She is a Baptist influencer, and she is founder of Christians Against Christian Nationalism. She and I provide a great example of people who may disagree theologically, but we are aligned in terms of our values. She doesn't think Jesus needs a state church. She doesn't think Jesus would judge gay people, and etc. She wants a world where there's room for all of us. She wants to equally share this world. And her version of Jesus is a beautiful version of Jesus. I push back a little bit, like, what about this? I actually bring some certain, like the Bible's take on women is not exactly charitable. And what about gay people, etc. And her answers, I think, reflect her own goodness. She has developed and she worships a Jesus that reflects her and her innate goodness. But if you read the Bible actually primes people to, one, respond to authoritarians, which is why so many are responding to a lot of these chest-thumping savior figures. They warn of the danger. They take easily frightened people. They scare them, and they say, I will save you. Religious people and fundy faiths are actually primed to respond to characters like these, especially when they're men. Secondly, I see that it is a divisive culture by its very nature, as we've been talking about the gods, certainly of the Old Testament. You declare an enemy, and the world's going to be filled with enemies because they are all different than you. And then you excuse your own worst behaviors, certainly your worst instincts, by declaring war on them in the name of justice, morality, goodness, scripture, God, etc. And we are seeing examples of that all around us. And it's more proof why ideas matter, because ideas so often translate into action and or inaction, depending on the circumstance. What people believe drives what they do. Yep. And that's why bad beliefs have to be countered. And hopefully we'll be prepared to even address our own beliefs in case we ever get something wrong. Let the best ideas win.
So. I can't wait for the day when I am proven wrong. When I get old and the young people come in behind me and say, actually, this thing you did was kind of fucked up and this was wrong. I can't wait to grow in that way, because like it's so important. And with the proliferation of social media now, we're able to share that much more rapidly. And that's how all the best revolutions happen. And
I hate it. Somebody says, Seth, you screwed up. You're wrong. I'm like, oh, shit. And it's just, it can be dumb stuff. Here's an example. You and I are just chatting, right?
Right.
I did a video years ago about how this was well before this frequent recent spike of flat Earth. We were talking about how some people believe the Earth was flat, and I said no, actually the Earth is round. Well, no. My inbox was just literally stuffed with people correcting me. The Earth is not round. The Earth is an oblate spheroid.
Yeah, idiot. Yeah.
What? And I was like, oh shit. I got to go back, and I fixed it in the video. But no,
I sell a T-shirt that says "Round Earther," and I get so much crap for that, because that's the joke, right? It's like it's not flat, and it's like, no, you have to be super duper correct. Yeah. Oh my God.
Just visit pedantry.com to find out more about these people. I mean, accuracy matters, but sometimes I think, come on, right?
By the way, I don't know if what you were talking about Christianity and things, and I never get the chance to bring this out, but since we were talking about the Bible, here in Matthew chapter 6, by the way, just for the Christians that I know are watching, Jesus says that when you pray, you shouldn't pray outside. You shouldn't let other people hear you. You should pray in a private room in your house. It should just be the Lord's Prayer. Our Father who art in heaven, blah, blah, blah. Nothing else. Do not pray with meaningless repetitions. Don't say it over and over. Just say that prayer privately and alone. God will take care of the rest. Don't ask for the things you want. That's hypocritical and vain. When you're fasting, don't tell people you're fasting. When you're giving to charity, don't tell people. It says, don't let your left hand know what your right hand's doing. And he says over and over and over that the people who are out here publicly sharing their belief in God, publicly praying, publicly talking about all the good that they do in the service of the Lord and all that, they've already gotten their reward from public gratification. They will get no reward in heaven. So if you are a Christian and you really do believe this stuff, and you're telling people that Jesus loves them and going around spreading the gospel and trying to pray out in the street corners and waving signs that say God hates whoever, you're doing it wrong. Jesus told you not to do that. And I wish we had more time to talk about that, but holy crap, we should put this a call-in show, right?
It's all right. I mean, the host can talk. It's okay.
Yeah, it's our show. We can do whatever we want.
I'll play that card, but no, go ahead. Go ahead. I mean, we can go off on a tangent. I don't think anybody's going to care. Go ahead.
You and I would talk all day, as we have proven many times.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, not on camera, which we should do more.
Okay.
So we've got a bunch of people here. Like the lines are super full. And I think this would be great for both of us. We've got Nikol, pronouns he, him, from Armenia, wants to ask, what are the life guidelines of atheists? What are we all about? Are we just taking beliefs away from people? Nikol, thanks so much for calling in. You are on the Atheist Experience. How are you doing today?
I am doing great. How are you?
I am fantastic, man. Never had a bad day in my life.
Okay. Yeah, I was calling in before, and that was a different topic, but I was thinking a lot about what we talked during that episode, and then I was curious, like, basically about the meaning of this, like, show, right? Like, basically, you want to convince people to stop believing. Is that right?
Yeah, that's part of it. Yeah, we would like to help people deconstruct and deconvert, to take down their religious beliefs. And there's a lot of reasons for that, because atheists are not a monolithic group. But for me personally, like Seth just gave a detailed explanation of why that's important, because beliefs inform actions. And if you believe that the things written in the Bible are good, then you're going to have some really horrible, hateful beliefs, and you're going to do some really horrible, hateful things. And so, and the Bible is just one example. If you believe in pretty much any religion that's on offer, if you believe in any God at all, it's gonna corrupt your way of thinking. And I think that's a carcinogenic societally and morally. And so there's lots of ways or reasons why we do this, but the general idea is to kind of poke at this belief a little bit and challenge it and ask questions about it. Because for way too long, as Douglas Adams said, you're just not allowed to ask questions or challenge religion. Why not? Because you're not. And that's just not fair, nor is it productive.
Well, I have a feeling like you're trying to, in your show, you're trying to focus mainly on Abrahamic religions, but what if there are like religions that can actually be useful for an individual or give some like meaning to life, unlike like atheism, because I don't see any like usefulness, right? Any utility of atheism, right? Like it basically equals any human being to, I mean, the life of a worm or any other like insect, right? I don't want to sound like insulting, but that's like you exist just because there is like some coincidence or something.
We can dig into that if you want, but like to answer, that would be a rabbit trail for a whole other thing. Just to answer your question though, yeah, we're poking at Abrahamic religions because those are the ones that are around us the most, and the ones that cause the most egregious violations to human rights around us the most. So, like, obviously, yeah, those are what we're going to talk about. There are double-digit Christian churches within walking distance of my house, and they are the ones that are trying to squash LGBT rights. They're the ones that fought against interracial marriage for a long time. They're the ones that upheld slavery for a long time. They're the ones that, you know, tell me that my family and I deserve to be tortured for all eternity for being who we are and not believing the way that they do. So, like, yeah, we're going to talk about them. They're right here, and they're a clear and present issue in our lives. But like that's just to answer your question directly. If you want, we can absolutely talk about the values of atheism and you know what good that does to replace things. I'm sure Seth has lots to say about that.
Well, I disagree with Nikol's premise, if I may, sir. Atheism is not a worldview. Atheism is not a position other than I'm not convinced that any God exists. Therefore, I just don't believe, I don't buy it. But it doesn't guarantee anything else about me. So this idea, well, atheist isn't giving you anything. Well, you know, the lack of belief in a deity, I think, may actually open the world up for you to perhaps better understand how the world works. If you're not locked into a dogmatic way of thinking, or you're not hamstrung by magical thinking. And there have been studies done where children who are taught these sort of magical religious stories about the origins of all things, etc., as they get older, they often have a much more difficult time making the distinction between what is real and what is not. They're easier to mislead. They find themselves having more trouble navigating the world. So if you are able to sort of deconstruct and remove the magical dogmatic stuff, the high control stuff, certainly, it gives you the opportunity to then say, well, what are my values? What do I think? And then that's where you build. And I call that humanism. Whenever you realize that we may only have this life, there's no evidence for a life 2.0. Okay, well, let's commit ourselves to fixing each other and helping each other and working on being a good steward of this world. And as far as purpose, not having a purpose, being just an insect, I disagree with your premise there. Do I have a finite life? Okay. You know, what I want, though, you know, the idea that I might want to live forever has no bearing on whether or not there's any evidence for eternal life. So fine, I'll accept the hand I've been given. But it also adds a preciousness to every moment because I am on the clock, because there is no tomorrow. Let's seize the day. Let's love who we love. Let's set a goal, achieve the dream. Let's fashion the world we want. And I think that has trimmed this idea that we are meaning makers, we're meaning generators, and we can do so from within instead of having it spoon fed to us from without. I think is precious and amazing. So, and I would resist this idea that being an atheist strips you of all the good stuff, because I think if you haven't been spoon fed a dogmatic worldview, but you have a chance to exist in the real world and make your own meaning and learn and discover every day, man, that's a life worth living.
What if it depends on like your, let's say, physical abilities? Let's say if you are a healthy person, of course, you can say, even if I have like a limited lifetime, right, it's still something. But what if a person is born, let's say, without their limbs or like blind? Of course, like it's not a life, right? It's basically just existence until they die, right? And from that perspective, we can say that like for every person, like atheism can be like arbitrary, right? For some people, they think if they have limited time, they can actually like try to do everything and any atrocities, right? Let's say if we take some of the former countries like in the past, right, the USSR, right, and most of the people like the government were basically atheists, and they've committed a lot of atrocities, and then some people might be good. So it's kind of like you can never predict like the outcome, right? Of course, if you're saying that like some Christians, they try to like take away somebody's rights, but the same thing you can say about atheists, right?
No, can I jump in quickly, Forrest?
Yeah,
hang on,
go for it,
I can't let this one go. I'm sorry.
I think you and
Well,
I
first of all,
the same thing. Go ahead.
There was a massive like detour, like you took an extreme turn when it came to what world governments led by atheistic dictators or whatever. And I think that's a total misrepresentation.
I'm sorry. I actually, there was like,
no. But what I want to come back to is the first thing that you brought up, which is interesting. And I'm going to get some pushback from some of my fellow atheists, but we have done shows like on people who are terminally ill, and they have found comfort in the idea that they may be, they may go on and they might be reunited with their loved ones in, I don't know, if not heaven and afterlife, some posthumous existence. And I will be the first to say I would never go in there and say, it's all a bunch of crap, don't you? There's no evidence for an afterlife, because that would not be the compassionate and humanistic thing to do. I don't think that the cost benefit there is worth it. I think you go there and you show human compassion. But I don't think lying to ourselves or other people to produce comfort is something that is really in the long term, especially a beneficial way to approach our problems. If someone is faced with a tremendous amount of suffering, then yeah, I understand. We develop the mechanisms for coping with those things. And sometimes that includes religion. But I think the best parts of that are human. They are human support, human love, human aid, and community. So I think rather than lie to people and say, oh, there is a Xanadu out there somewhere where you will have a whole body, which sounds amazing, and I get it, I would like to see us actually as human beings go in and say, you know what? I don't know what's next, but I do know I'm right here, right now. You were dealt a shitty hand, but we're going to do our best together, and I'm going to be here with you. I think that is a human connection and a humanistic endeavor that far exceeds any fantasy about something out there somewhere. Anyway, that's my 2 cents, Forrest. Go ahead, brother.
No, I think you hit the nail on the head in a couple of ways, and I want to touch on both of those things. Number one, the idea that you're dealt the hand you have, and that you have to make the most out of life. A lot of when we talk about religion, it cycles around this idea of what's called terror management, just dealing with the terror of reality not being under your control. And so, for example, when we talk about a god controlling everything, we talk about aliens building societies for us, we talk about lizard people and the Illuminati controlling, even like a terrifying, crazy, weird, nonsensical, magical fantasy that tells you everything is under control is better for our mentalities than the reality of there is nobody at the controls. You could die at any moment for a variety of different things. I'm sitting here doing this show. I could have a plane engine fall on my head at this very second. I could have a brain aneurysm at this very second. Most of the things that happen to you are by chance and not your fault, even good things and bad things. And at the end of the day, you just have to be the best person that you can be, and you're not going to get rewarded for it, and you're not going to get punished for it. And that's just your life, and that's it. And when it's over, it's over. That kind of nihilistic perspective, which I am a fan of, is scary for a lot of people. And so we invent these ways to try to cope with that. And usually that ends with, there's a plan. There's somebody in control. But at the end of the day, is that any better? Because you could point to the best person in the world and say, oh, this person has an amazing life, and they have all this money and property and riches, and they have food and water and all this stuff. Great. Wow, they did an XYZ thing. That's part of the plan. Also, 24 to 30,000 children under the age of 5 die every day from starvation. So is that part of the plan? Entamoeba histolytica is a parasitic amoeba that burrows into your intestines and causes amoebic dysentery, where you literally what, you know, how much of this plan is actually something you're willing to get behind and say is good? You know what I mean? And that brings me to the last thing. You like Seth said, you kind of went on a bunny trail there for a second, but you mentioned all these atheistic leaders out there that have done horrible things. Okay, sure. Here's the gambit for you then. Here's the question that you need to ask yourself is that, can you think of a good thing that an atheist could not do that a religious person could do in the name of religion? Something good that an atheist wouldn't be able to accomplish, a good thing in the world that we wouldn't be able to do as a result of our atheism that religious people could do? Of course not. We can all do good things, and there's philosophy behind everything that we can do. That they can do that. But can you think of an evil thing that an atheist wouldn't do in the name of atheism that a religious person would do in the name of religion? Do you really think that Stalin and Mao were out there murdering people because of atheism? That they woke up and were like, hey, there's no God. That means I should go murder people, right? No, they were doing that for their own political and philosophical reasons. Yeah. They had other things there. Whereas if you look at the religious side of it, the KKK is a religious organization. Al-Qaeda is a religious organization. The Lord's Resistance Army is a religious organization. The Nazis were a religious organization. So, like, yeah, you can point to an evil atheist, sure, but you can't point to evil atheism. That doesn't exist.
Well, I would rather say not like they're committing it like in the name of atheism, but it's like it seems like nobody's going to hold a person accountable. Even if you, for example, a person says, I'm a good person and seems like a good person, like a decent person, but then like hiddenly like commits something bad and then never reveals it, right? And nobody's going to find it out. And basically this is like, from the Christian point of view, you live in fear that one day you will be like, you'll answer for everything you've done, even if nobody knew about it.
Right.
But
so no, I disagree with your premise there. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, so who's the real good person there? I don't believe that I will be rewarded for doing good things. I don't believe I will be punished for doing bad things. And yet I choose to do good things and eschew bad things. Meanwhile, you have this other person who has both the carrot and the stick. If I'm good to enough people, I get eternity in paradise. If I'm bad to people, I'll be burned forever. There's, I think it's Kohlberg was the psychologist, if I remember, that talked about the different levels of moral development. Level 1, the basic, most fundamental moral development is, if I do this, I'll get in trouble. And if I do that, I'll get a cookie. That's very basic moral development. The highest level of moral development is the application of universal moral principles to all situations. I believe in human rights and well-being. Therefore, I can apply that to every situation and come up with a moral answer, as opposed to, I don't want to go to hell and I do want to go to heaven, so I guess I'll not murder anybody today.
You know, if I
Who's
do
really
good,
more moral here?
I don't want a cookie. I want a Cracker Barrel all day breakfast pancake.
I want a goddamn
if I do.
breakfast.
But I mean, I know this call's gone on for a few, but I think one of the things that he is speaking to is this desire for cosmic justice. If you are an atheist and you don't believe that there will be a divine judgment for the people doing the worst to people, you know, to committing the worst acts, the worst atrocities, well, what happens if they get away with it? And I understand that sentiment. And I think that's one of the reasons people like the idea that, you know, one day the person who harmed so many and who tortured and who was so abusive and terrible and all, well, one day, even if they were never caught in this life, they're going to stand before a God somewhere and be judged. I get the appeal of that. But, you know, my desire for cosmic justice doesn't mean it's true. What I want really has no bearing on what is or what we have evidence for. So, but I understand. I relate to your concern. Wouldn't it be nice if we saw the people who did terrible things, we knew they'd never totally get away with it. They'd get what was coming to them. Unfortunately, we live in a world where often bad people don't get the good stuff and horrible people get rewarded. And it's, you know, all we can do is commit ourselves to trying to solve those problems here in the here and now.
Yep. We have responsibility, man. And if somebody is good and they're religious, I don't think that they're good because of the religion. I think they're good in spite of it. I think humans are naturally good, and religion is poison. But yeah, we've been on this call for about 16 minutes. I'll let you have the last. Like, do you have one more thing you want to throw at us before we move on to the next caller?
Yeah, if I may, just last question. I was really curious, like if the whole like premise of Christianity was about one only thing, like basically comforting people and nothing else, like no rules, would you still do this show, or you would basically say like everyone chooses what they believe and never come back to it again?
Let me understand. Wait. Are you saying if Christianity didn't carry all of the baggage of judgment, shame, fear, and bigotry, but it was just a kind of a feel-good window dressing for living, that kind of Christianity?
Like for example, you just open the book and it just says there is a God, right, that is going to give you like some afterlife and stuff, but nothing about like how you should live and stuff, right? So would you say that religion would be acceptable for you?
That's not Christianity, first of all, but that's if somebody holds to the idea of, hey, one day I will go on to heaven, I don't worry too much about those people. I'm more interested in the more fundamentalist dogmatic faiths that tell people how to live, what to think, who to love, how to vote, who set humans against each other. My argument isn't as much with the deists or someone spiritualist who says, oh, one day I'll see you and grandma in heaven someday. Those people don't concern me quite as much.
Yeah, I would say that like the biggest thing for me is that true things are important, and it's important to believe true things. So like for me, if this religion was just there's a magical afterlife and that's it, I would still be out here saying, hey, there's better ways to cope with death. I don't believe in an afterlife, and I've had to develop good ways to cope with death. Like that's fine for me.
Wasn't it Bertrand Russell, Forrest? Bertrand Russell said, if the thing is true, you should believe it. And if it is not, you should not.
Yeah,
I think that's
pretty much
fair.
It. And I think it was also Bertrand Russell who said that, like, if even with the sheer amount of religions on offer, even if we knew for sure that one of them was true, we should all expect damnation as a matter of probability. And like, that's I don't know, man. It's just, I love that guy. But that was the whole thing. Just, I think there's better ways to seek comfort, and you don't need a fairy tale to do it. And I think at the end of the day, if you even if you have something like the innocuous religion that you were talking about, even with that, you're still using a different kind of logic and reasoning for one thing than you do for everything else. And I don't like that. I have an issue with that, but that's just me, because that's my job, is to think all the time about things. That's my whole life. So like, and there are a lot of people out there that don't think I do a good job, and that's just fine. Anyway, with that, Nikol, I really appreciate you talking to us today. We're going to move on to the next call, but feel free to call back in if you want to talk about anything else. All right.
Okay. Thank you.
Take care, man.
It's funny. Something about Bertrand Russell's, the way, his accent and his elocution. And I would listen to, the archives of him speaking, and I always just felt like an idiot. Like when he'd speak, and I always thought, he's so erudite, and he's just the way he sounds. And then I'm over here like, y'all, religion is just crazy. Right? Being in Oklahoma, and like, man,
Yeah.
what's up with this Jesus dude? Just not quite as impressive when I
No, we don't. We have the same gravitas in this side of the world. Hey, if you out there watching the show at this very second would like to support the ACA, there's lots of ways you can do it. You can become a member of this channel for as little as 99 cents a month. Just click the join button down below the video, and you'll get special chat emojis and all sorts of other cool stuff. Everybody put those chat emojis in the chat right now. Let the people who aren't members know what they're missing out on. You can also send us a super chat with a question or comment that will be read live during the show on air. We have, holy crap, so many of those. Give me a second. We'll go through those. We've got $2 from Keely Commando. Thank you so much for everything. Thank you so much for watching. Sorry, that's $2. That's €2. So 2 theoretical dollars. We've got £5. Forrest, please acknowledge that it's not known whether the expansion of pi contains every natural number. Note it's natural means positive and whole. from Sean Isherwood. Yeah, I said on a call over on, I think it was on Skep Talk, on the atheist call-in show that I do, that like you can put any number in pi, because some guy was saying that like the 4,389th digit of pi is the same as this thing in the Bible, and that means God's real. And I said that like you can find pretty much any number in the expansion of pi. And this person has taken issue with that and has messaged several times on several shows and other places to tell me that I'm wrong. Man, I don't know. That's just what I heard. I'm not a mathematician. I've seen people test this, and like, yeah, probably. I guess it hasn't ever been fully fleshed out properly, because that's impossible, and therefore there may actually be something out there that you can't find. But if you look up people like Online Kind, I think they did a whole thing where they typed in like, if you convert the digits of pi to some alphanumeric code, I think it was, you can like type in anything and it'll come up with that. And like they say, hi, my name's Kind, I was born on this day, and like you found it. And like, it's crazy how much it works.
If I can jump in too, I'm always fascinated by these Bible code types, right? Rather than a plain speaking God who says, all right, I want you to do A, B, and C in this order. Yeah, they're talking about metaphor, parable, or there's some weird Da Vinci Code type thing where you have to take the, this letter and this verse and this chapter, and you move this around and you do these calculations, and it all adds up to something. And I've always found that fascinating. Like, how sadistic would that deity be? Like you would have to do such weird analyses to be able to find it. Secondly, and I just want this on the record, an expansion of pi is also on the menu at Cracker Barrel 24/7. So I just need that out there on the record.
People need to know. People need to know.
I'm here to. I'm a giver. You're welcome. You're welcome.
We all go to worship at Cracker Barrel after this show. Yeah. Worship our atheist gods. It's another one from Atomic Johnny, sent $10 to say, keep slaying ignorance, you guys. Love all that you both do. Thank you so much for sending that money. $10 from Andrew Sword. Forrest, my kids have been enjoying math-based media such as number blocks. Do you have any suggestions for biology and evolution-based media for children? Also at Seth, suckling. Pardon me. So yeah, there's a few things you can look up. I really recommend Stated Clearly with John Perry on the YouTube machine. He's really cool, very easy to understand. It's stated clearly stuff about biology, cartoons. He's an animator. He's a really cool guy. Also, Minute Earth is really good. Another one that's really easy to watch and understand. I don't know really a lot about like little kid stuff, but if you like numbers and you don't mind like a lot of details about it, Numberphile is a really good channel. I think they're from the University of Nottingham, which is where the periodic table of videos is from as well. We got John Doan, I don't know, $9.99. Hey family, I'm excited to be alive and free. I don't waste time. I don't waste 1 second of life today sitting in a religious building. I'm here to watch and see if Tim from the chat before the show is willing to call. Oh my God, this fly. I'm going to lose my freaking right in my face. Yeah, I don't know who Tim from the chat is, but hey, the lines are open. Call on in. Greg Markowski sent $4.99 to say, great host today. 50%. As most weeks, thanks for the show. Ben Jones sent $10. I lived in Thailand. The people there have no idea that Jesus even existed. 95% Buddhist. Forrest is correct. Where you live has a direct impact on your beliefs. We should all be into the sun god if we were Aztec. Isn't it very lucky for all the evangelical Christians here in America that they were born in the right denomination of the right religion in the right part of the world to share the right translation of the right version of the right book? They got Joma, or maybe Yoma, 1977 AA. There's a string of numbers here. $4.99. If you haven't read or listened to Christopher Hitchens' book, God is Not Great, do yourself a favor and check it out. It's excellent. And the full audio book narrated by Christopher Hitchens is on YouTube if you're into stealing. Ben Jones sent $5. The Beer of Death is why people believe in God and an afterlife, by the way. There is a Buddhist hell theme park in Thailand. Is hell real within Buddhism? All that. I don't know, man. Wild. And then finally, James Cudahy sent 20 Canadian dollars. Thank you for sending 20 of your colorful dollars to us to say thank you so much for the show. Thank you so much for being a part of it. And those are all the super chats that we had waiting for us. And
did someone say something about Seth either sucking or suckling? Because I'm uncomfortable with either of those sentiments.
They said suckling because you said the word suckling was a problem for you.
It makes me uncomfortable. It's like the word moist. The word moist it's something about it.
Everybody type suckling in the chat.
No,
for Seth, please.
Stop.
Everybody type suckling.
Stop.
Oh, we got one more just then. We got Marcia Everett said $2. Can we change Atheist Day from 3/23 to 4/13? I don't get the joke, but I don't have authority over that decision. But yeah, thank you so much for sending in all these things. We really appreciate it. It really helps out the show a whole bunch. We'll try to read super chats between the comments or between the calls. But we do have a lot of other calls.
Let me ask you a question, Forrest.
Yeah, I'll give you an answer.
Do you just have one speed? Like, do you tackle everything like a Jack Russell Terrier? Because when I hear you, you are, and this is true. When we were sitting in an interview room, this was a few months back, and I think I had you and Erica. I don't know. I've interviewed you a few times, and both times I thought you have like boundless enthusiasm. And I don't think this can be faked. Like, is this you? Are you just that freaking focused?
You've met me off camera as well. And this is it, man. This is what I'm all about. I tried to, when we went to that restaurant a couple of times, I tried to hold it together and sit like a good person.
I literally asked the bartender, I was like, just slip something in there, man. Just slip something in there. Trust me. He'll forgive you later.
No, I can't be stopped. I cannot calm down, nor can I be forced to calm down by any means.
Okay.
You should see me when I'm just here working. I was talking about maybe I need to start a Twitch channel or something.
We're quite a pair because here I am. I'm kind of over here and I'm, my eyes are sort of half open all the time. It's just genetic. And then, and you're just so enthusiastic. And
my eyes are half open because I smile with my whole face.
I envy that about you. Okay. Forgive the digression. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, you're fine. You're fine, man. You're not the first person to ask me that. People think I'm putting on an act, but like honestly, that was one thing I decided when I started going on, because I thought about it for a minute. I was like, maybe I need to like really be a lot more pulled together.
I really do feel like if someone gave you like Red Bull, it would be spontaneous human combustion. You would actually burst into a ball of flame. And so I just think those things.
I recently discovered Monster Energy drink. Those things are a cheat code, dude. I had to be up all night writing a chapter. I have to be up all night friggin' editing a video or something like that.
Just the first step is to admit you have a problem.
Be careful with caffeine, y'all, because the fun fact, it doesn't actually give you energy. It stops your body from realizing how tired you actually are. It gums up the, I think it's the adenosine receptors. No, it's adenine. Is it?
Are you actually asking me?
No, when ATP, adenosine triphosphate, breaks down over the course of energy production, you have adenosine is the byproduct, and that sticks to receptors on your nerve cells, and that's what tells you you're tired. So you relax, and then it rebuilds ATP and gives you energy for the next day. But caffeine gums up those receptors, so your body produces more receptors so that you're not getting, because you're not feeling tired enough, you're not getting the sleep you need. And so you drink more caffeine to gum up more receptors. And that's why you have a crash after you stop doing caffeine, because you get addicted to it. I haven't had to think about this in years and years. I'm 99% sure I'm getting that chemical name right. The point is, be careful and only use caffeine when you need to, because otherwise you become dependent on it. When you stop drinking it, you get all sorts of diarrhea and nausea and irritability and insomnia and depression and all sorts of problems. And it takes like 2 or 3 weeks for your body to reabsorb all those extra receptors. So use it as a cheat code, not as a crutch, is what I'm saying. That's my idea. But also live your life and do what you want is the other thing. I'm not trying to give health advice on AXP. It's just, you know what I mean? I say all this to say,
I'm just going to sit back and be a spectator, and I'll let you race the track at 280 miles an hour. Go ahead, brother.
I get excited about biochem, y'all.
Go ahead.
We have a million other callers, and a lot of them are good, and I want to get on them. And I think this one would be really great for you specifically to tackle into, because you know the Bible better than I do. It's Emmanuel, pronouns he, him, from Texas, says, yes, the God of Christianity is a good God. Emmanuel, you're on AXP. How are you doing today?
How are you doing today? I'm doing good. 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 I'm do How are you, Forrest? How are you, Seth? I
Really
want to I want to start with a question instead of starting with a premise.
Sure.
I'm gonna say this is good and loving, and if you disagree, just let me know. So, God demonstrated His own love towards us while we were sinners. Christ died for us. It is found in the book, which is I saw it in your hand. It's the blue book. If you go to Romans 5
It's
and
biblical.
8. Okay, yeah, I didn't drink coffee today, so I'm not, I can't read the whole passage. But you get my point, right? So if
For God so loved the
if
world, He gave His
we,
only begotten Son. That whole thing, John 3:16.
yeah, like just think about it, like we deserve death, right? Because the punishment of sin is death. So we all deserve death. So instead of us dying and paying for it, Christ was manifested in the flesh. Then He died on the cross and resurrected. Then we could be justified by faith and nothing more. How is that not a good deed?
Can I start, actually? Can I start with this one so you go with that? So just really quickly, who made those rules?
Who made those rules? What you mean by who made those rules?
The rule that the punishment for sin is death, that death is the wage of sin, and that and the rules of morality in the world and all that. Who made all that?
Musa.
Who?
Hello? Musa.
Hey. I don't understand. I'm
Hello?
not familiar with this character. Who's this?
Like, you're American, right? I'm not American, so I read the Amharic Bible. So in the Amharic Bible, it says Musa. So it means
would it be fair for me, just for layman's terms, because we're an American show and it would be a lot easier, would it be fair for me to say that God made those rules? Would that be a good translation that you could work with?
I wouldn't say, because the Bible says that the law was given through because of the transgression of men, and it was given by angels. So
let me rephrase my question then, maybe, because I think we're talking past each other. So let me rephrase my question. Who is the person or the being or whatever who decides what's good, like how to judge us? Who made, like, I shouldn't say made the rules, because that's how I asked it the first time. Who is the final judge, the arbiter, the person who decides whether we are good or bad or deserve punishment or reward?
I would say Christ Jesus.
Okay, cool. Fine. We can work with that. Also, is it possible that this God can change his mind? That Jesus, if Jesus is the one enforcing these rules, that Jesus can change his mind and say, actually, you know what? I've decided that this is good instead of that.
I don't understand the question. Sorry, Forrest.
Is it possible that Jesus can change the rules that he is made and is enforcing?
He changed it. Hebrews 8:7 through verse 13. It says that the new covenant was introduced.
Right. So here's what I'm getting at, because I think you think that I'm trying to like trap you in some weird like Bible lecture here, and I'm really not. I'm just trying to understand where you're coming from.
I know you're trying to trap me. I mean, you don't have to.
No, not at all. I'm not trying to like trick you into like saying something weird. This is my whole argument. This is what I'm trying to get at here. I'll lay it out plainly for you, and you can decide what to do with it. Is this God, Jesus, God, Holy Spirit, I don't know which one, the thing you believe in, right? Made this world, made humanity, made the rules by which we must live, and made the punishment for those rules, and made the reward for those rules. All of this is by design, right? That's something that I'm 99% sure we can agree that's what you believe, right? All of this is by design. And then because it didn't go the way he wanted it to, because we ended up being the way that he made us, he, instead of changing the rules, had to invent a weird little loophole for the rules that he himself made, which is that we make Jesus and then kill Jesus and all this stuff. So what you have here is a cult of human sacrifice. It's not a system or a religion that says that human sacrifice is wrong. It's a religion that believes that one human sacrifice was successful. And so we've sacrificed a person, and now, because of this blood ritual that none of us agreed to in this day and age, and I wouldn't want to participate in, now we are bound to this new covenant, this new law, this new contract that if we misbehave, we get to burn in hell for eternity. The person who made the rules couldn't change them, couldn't just be forgiving. If God is perfect, why not just forgive us for whatever we do wrong? I'm not a parent, but if I was, I certainly wouldn't torture my children or say, I already murdered the dog, therefore now I've decided to love you again. I would just forgive my children. So like the whole structure here, I understand what you're saying, that you think this is a good thing. I think what you're presenting to me here is hideous. It's not smart. It's not moral. Do you understand where I'm coming from here?
I understand, but I disagree because I don't think that God designed everything, then it went out of his way, then he tried to fix it. It's more of like God predetermined for everything that will happen in the world. So even though he knew that we will become sinners, God created a certain people, and he chose a certain people so the elect might be in heaven with him. And those people who are not elect are solely made for destruction. So you're missing
so
the
he
point
made
of
so he
the
made
doctrine of
people, what you just said, he made people knowing what would happen. A certain elect among them were destined for heaven, and a certain select among them were destined for destruction. So you're telling me he made a bunch of people for the sole purpose of torturing them forever in hell. Their goal, the job of these people, is to go to hell.
I don't understand, Forrest. I thought you knew this because this is found in Romans chapter 9, where God...
Yes, it is. That's why I'm asking you to clarify that that's what you believe in. You believe that a God made people so that he could torture them forever.
If they're not elect, I already clarified. I'm not saying that everyone is created to be tormented, but those
right, no,
are
not everyone, just some of them. He created a bunch of people and said, these ones are going to be tortured. I made these so that they can be tortured. I made these ones so they can sit in my theme park, but these ones over here I made specifically so that I can torture them later. That's what he did.
But isn't that because they have not left their sin? So he's kind of, it's like if you go to the court and they'll say like Forrest, Valkai. I'm not saying like you have done this, by the way. This is just an example. So when you go to the court, they'll say like Forrest, Valkai has done this, he has stealed, he has break the law. If you are found guilty, even though other people have manipulated you to do such things, you'll be judged, right? So it is fair that God will torment a certain people so that they will be condemned, because they are condemned because they are still in their sin, because they have
that's not what you said.
Forgiveness.
That's not what you said, Emmanuel. You changed it. So, yeah, no, sure. If you want to say that bad people should be punished, that's cool. That's a different argument. But what you said was God already knows everything that's going to happen, and he made these specific people to be destroyed. He made elect people to go to heaven, and a different group of people that will die in sin and will go to hell, and he already knows that that's going to happen. So why did God make people to torture them? Why would a good and loving God do that?
But you have to understand that when you say that there's a loving God, right? So he is loving to those who are elected, right? Let's say...
Okay, so he made a bunch of people, but he only loves some of them. And the rest of them, he actually is excited about the fact that he can torture them because he doesn't love them. And that's why he made them so that he could torture them.
No, that's not the analogy. The analogy here is...
That's what you're saying, though.
Okay, Seth Andrews, let's say Seth Andrews is a good person to me, He gives me, comfort. He gives me gifts. He's just like generally compassionate. And let's say that the same person tortures people in the basement, right? So since I only know the positive things from him, I'll probably say that he is good and loving, even though he is doing like, scary things, like behind closed doors. That's how I see the biblical God.
Because you think that you're getting a reward, you can call God good, but all the people who he's going to torture for all eternity, those people maybe are justified in saying that he's an asshole.
They're going to call him what you just said, because that's what the Bible says in Revelation, right? When they are tortured, they'll blaspheme against God. The more they are tortured, the more they hate God, right?
Right. That's the thing, though. That's what I'm trying to get across to you here. And forgive me, Seth, if you have something, please feel free to interrupt me. But like, what I'm trying to get across to you here, dude, what I'm trying to get you to understand is that any God who would torture people for any reason, period, is not a good God. Period. That's the whole thing. Especially if he made people specifically to torture them. That's kind of fucked up. If I had 2 children and I just decided I'm going to love this kid and hate this kid, and this one kid that I love, I'm going to make sure to give them all sorts of good treats and foods and candies, pay for their college, get them a good all sorts. And this other kid, I decided right at the outset that I don't like them, so I'm going to kick them a whole bunch. And when they hate me, I'm going to feel justified in setting them on fire in the garage. Does that make me good? Does that make me a good parent, a good person? I don't think so. And that's what you're saying this God does. God made people and decided, I love these people. These people are my elected, chosen few that will live in heaven with me. And these other people, I'm going to send to hell. They're going to sin, and they're going to die in sin, and they're going to burn for all eternity. And when they get there, they're going to blaspheme against me. And that means that I'm right. And that fucking sucks, dude. That's not reasonable.
Okay. So the reason us doing it and God doing is different in my eyes, because like, for example, we should not kill anybody, right? So murdering is bad, but still we see God killing everybody in the world in the flood story in Genesis. We see God commanding Israelites to kill the Amorites, the Midianites, and the people in Jericho, and a lot of heathens, right? The reason those are, and you see God telling Saul to kill the entire Amalekites, right? So because when you think about it, God could do whatever he wants upon his creation, whether we like it or not, whether we think it's
so ethical, because he's God, he has special rules, and anything he does is good, is what you're saying.
It's justified. That's what I'm saying. Because it's justified. If I made an AI, right? Let's say I just made an AI. I create a certain AI to do good things. I created a certain AI to do damaging things. So am I not justified since I created those AIs?
If AI were human beings with minds and bodies and feelings, yeah, it would be wrong for you to just do whatever you wanted to them.
Maybe you and I have a different.
If I may,
by all means.
I'm honestly, I really feel like we need to move on with another call, and because what I'm hearing is this sort of avalanche of discordant claims and directions, misdirections. I think we can address a few of these, you and I, Forrest, because he does, in the white noise, I do pick out a few things that I have heard by other people who are relative apologists for the faith, but I don't feel like we're getting forward momentum here. So would you mind, Emmanuel, if we were to move on and we were to speak among ourselves for just a few?
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're very kind.
Take care, Emmanuel.
I hear this sort of Calvinistic presuppositionalism. Predestination. Forgive me.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea is that God foreknows. Right? He knew well before your birth whether or not you would be in heaven or hell. And if
Yep.
you are predestined for damnation, you're pretty much hosed, and nothing else you can do will make any difference. It's all the die is cast kind of a thing, which is tremendously tragic. Secondly, I heard, and I've heard this as well, that God is God. He can do whatever he wants. So everything that he does that happens to be good for us is just gravy. It's just a bonus. It's the cherry on top, because we deserve so much worse. We are born broken. We are all born sinners. There is no one worthy, no, not one, according to Scripture. And that brings up a whole other conversation about the morality or the logic of original sin. This idea that, because of a couple of garden nudists were guilty of rebellious fruit munching thousands of years ago, somehow we then deserve eternal torment. And the same people who would never dream of taking their own children out to the backyard when they have been, quote unquote, disobedient, pouring gasoline on them, lighting a match and watching them writhe and scream. And then if they had the power, they would regenerate them over and over to make them, writhe and scream again. They would never abide that in their own life. And yet with God, they say, well, he's God. He can do whatever he wants.
Mm-hmm.
I find that tremendously problematic. I also think it's interesting, too, when people who are moral people faced with the idea of hell and the Scriptures, depart from me, you who are cursed, into a lake of everlasting fire and damnation. And I bring this verse up. They walk away from it and they say, well, my God would never make hell. My God would never send anyone to the flames, And so what they did is they just sort of excised that part of the Bible out and fashioned their own more moral faith. And that tells me that they are more moral than the God of the religion they worship. There's a lot going on in there and a lot to unpack, but those were the things that jumped out to me.
Yeah, Emmanuel has called into several shows that I've been on, and that's pretty much always where the conversations go, is that he brings up something that God can do this, that, or the other. I point out that's a really shitty thing to do. And it usually defaults back to what he said at the end. God can do it because God's God and God can do whatever he wants. And it's good because God said so.
Well, and I think too that we're listening to abuse language, right?
Yes, that's precisely where I was going.
Forgive me. I'm sorry. It's just what happens when you invite another host on. Is I Bigfoot you and then I interrupt your flow, and that's my apologies. Go ahead.
I think I've spoken for 75% of the show. Please go on.
Well, no. The idea is that you are only good because of me. You are unworthy. You get your worth from me. You don't deserve goodness in your own life. So any goodness that you get it's a gift, and it's a gift from me. It's because of me. If you are harmed or if I hurt you, it's your fault. You made me do it. You forced my hand. You made me hurt you. And whatever you do, never, ever leave me or else. This is the God of the Bible. And that's why I always say that Christians, in many ways, who hold to that fundamentalist view, they are the battered bride of Christ.
Yep, absolutely. It's freaking, there's a lot there. And it's one of the many reasons why we do this show, is because this is, I think you summarize it really well when you talk about abuse. This is an abusive ideology. It's an abusive way to treat yourself. It's an abusive way to treat children, to teach them that they deserve this kind of eternal torment, and that Yod is always watching everything you do. It's like Elf on the Shelf plus murder. It's really insane. And this is a way to abuse people into obedience. And I think then those people grow up thinking that's a good thing, and they do it to the next generation.
Emmanuel really sees this as a good thing. I really am not worthy. And so if I am among the elect, then great for me, And there's this type of Christianity infantilizes people. If you read it in the Bible, and Christians will embrace this, be ye as little children, right? And we see this in the faith where our identity is to be erased, right? Not me, but Christ lives in me. We've seen the t-shirts and they say more of Jesus, less of me. This is an attack upon the self. You are to surrender your own identity, your own choices, your own value in favor of the group or authoritarian identity. They are you, and you've sacrificed your own self in that way. And some people in the church think this is beautiful. And in the ritual of baptism, you die, symbolically die to yourself. And when they bring you out of the water, you are risen, a new creation in Jesus. But the symbolism is pretty profound. You are dead. The flesh of you, your identity must die. And I think that's tragic. I think yourself and who you are, your uniqueness is valuable in its own right. And that's something I think we need to counter out there with Christians and other fundy faiths.
Yep. It's painful because it really does. It strips away the very identity of people into this very simplistic, your whole job is to just exist as a worshiping thing. And you can't even die and escape it. Because when you die, the fun's only begun. Now, if you were good at worshiping and being, subjugated, now you get an eternity of that. And if you were bad at it, now you get an eternity of hellfire, no matter how good of a person you were. It's really painful to listen to. And I think it's important. You said it a second ago. I'm going to reiterate it. It's important to remember that people like Emmanuel aren't crazy, stupid, evil, brain dead, whatever. They have been raised to believe. They have been taught to believe that this is a good thing. And they really do think that this is the only way to be good. And that is the issue at hand.
And I would send Emmanuel back and to square one before everything else. At this moment, if I was having a one-on-one, I would say, okay, these rules that are set in place that were broken, that produced the original sin, which made you unworthy. Which verse is that? We'd nail that down. And I would say, who wrote that verse and how do you know?
Yeah.
I think you start right there at square one, the first step in the journey. Who wrote it down and how do you know?
Yeah.
And I mean, if you can't answer those questions, we see the house of cards already starts to fall.
Yeah, absolutely. This whole conversation between you and I right now is actually perfect because we have another caller, and this is going to be very brief. And then I've got a bunch of we have the super chats to read and everything like that. But we have somebody here who simply has identified himself as a believer, pronouns he, him, from the USA, who wants to know why we promote atheism. A believer, can I call you A? You're on AXP. Have you been hearing everything we've been just saying? Do you understand now why? Because we talked about at the beginning why we promote atheism, why we do this show. Do you understand now, like, where we're coming from, that these beliefs are detrimental to people, to their minds, to their societies that they live in, that these cause harm, and that atheism is just trying to separate people from that? You are on the air. Can you do you understand where we're coming from now?
I think the most part is everybody misunderstands the whole concept of God.
Well, I'm sorry, could you repeat that, please? Everybody understands the concept of God?
I think it's rests on what we understood about God and the whole thing about believing and God. So if we misunderstood the whole thing, we can interpret or say in any way you want to.
Okay,
Sure.
hang on. Am I hearing that people have misinterpreted or misunderstood the scriptures?
Even the scripture is, there is not only one way to the truth. So the scripture is only one way. There are other ways.
How do you know that?
I'm a researcher.
But how do you know that in your research? What research have you come up with? How do you know there are many ways to salvation?
Well, if you do a research, you have a lot of information to go by.
Yeah. You did research and you have information, and I'm asking what the information is. How do you know that there are many ways to salvation?
Well, a lot of depends on your belief, but the question is
No. Hang on. I'm gonna stop right here because I want to make sure we're doing this right. If I believe or disbelieve really doesn't impact whether something is true, right? No amount of belief makes something a fact, if I may quote James Randi. So, how do you know there are many paths to heaven and salvation? How do you know that?
Like I said, you have a lot of information to go by, and you judge by those information.
Which information? I mean, I'm not going to, I promise I won't do this to the audience much longer. I need one of those pieces, a specific piece of information. What knowledge can you bring me today?
I think right now let's focus on the reason I call for you promoting atheism.
Right, but
Because
you started the conversation this way, so we're just going to continue.
I feel cheated. I was excited because I was going to get some data from you, something solid that proved that there were many ways to salvation, and I feel denied. All I need is just one thing that you know and how you know it.
Well, we need to go one step back before we can go in there, because the information regarding that is so vast that we can't talk about on your show.
I'm sorry. That was just right over me. I won't torture the audience anymore, but I will say I'm disappointed. Yeah, I myself was looking for the revelation, and I feel like it has not been produced. So anyway, I'll hand it over to Forrest.
We'll wrap up. Go ahead. But yeah, a believer. That's. I think you started the conversation this way, so that's why Seth was asking those questions. But to answer your question directly, why do we promote atheism? Just to reiterate, again, you can watch this whole show. We've talked about it quite a bit, because beliefs inform actions. And when you believe, if you can believe absurd things, then you can do atrocious things. And people who believe that this book right here is the only guide to light and truth and blah, 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 and that the lessons taught in the Bible are good lessons, those are the people who go out and bomb abortion clinics and kill gay people and try to pass laws to destroy people's lives and happiness. So like when you are religious, you are prone to those types of things. You are more at risk of those types of things. Atheism is simply the lack of belief in a God. Doesn't mean you aren't a bad person. Doesn't mean you aren't crazy. Doesn't mean you don't do dumb things. Doesn't mean anything else. Just it frees you from that one type of thinking. So I hope that answers your question, even though you would not answer ours.
I think that's a follow-up question.
Go for it.
Can I ask you a follow-up question? The follow-up question is, don't you think promoting atheism is suicidal spiritually?
I don't believe in a spirit, so no.
Who was that comedian who said threatening an atheist with hell is like threatening to punch them in their aura? I always thought that was a great line.
I am not terribly afraid of orcs, right? If I sit here and badmouth Sauron, I don't think that he's going to send the orcs to get me, because I don't believe any of those things are real. So if you were to ask me, don't you think that, bad-mouthing Sauron is suicidal? He's going to send the orcs after you. I don't believe any of that's real. Therefore, I'm not afraid of it. I don't think your God is real. I don't think a spirit is real.
Okay, so you want to know what is truth, right?
Yeah, well, that's what Seth was asking. He was asking, how do you know, what truth is and why there's different paths to salvation and stuff.
So you know why you become an atheist?
Because I'm not convinced of any God claims is why.
It's true, but not scientifically accurate.
I think we should.
One more, a little more, just a little more.
All right, go ahead, Forrest. Knock yourself out.
Just a little bit. A believer, if I were to tell you that I have an elephant behind this bookshelf, would you believe me?
No.
Okay, but elephants do exist, and bookshelves do exist, and surely elephants have been behind bookshelves before. So why wouldn't you believe me?
We know that the elephant can't fit behind your bookshelf.
Cool. So, like, even though all of the parts of that make sense, the thing that I'm saying doesn't make sense. Does that mean that you know for absolute sure that there is no elephant? Have you looked behind the bookshelf to prove there isn't an elephant?
I can see the shadow behind your bookshelf.
You haven't looked behind it. You have not
awesome.
come to my house and moved this bookshelf and looked for elephants. Therefore, you can't know for sure.
I would also, by the way, I'd also like to say that elephant behind the bookshelf is also on the menu at Cracker Barrel. And so that's just check for it. It's off menu. Actually, it's off menu. But
the point is, you don't have proof that there's no elephant there, but you know for sure that you can say honestly that you don't believe it, right? So when I give you a claim, like an elephant behind the bookshelf, you can either say, yes, that's true, or no, that definitely is not true, or you can say, I don't believe you. If you say, yes, there is, or no, there isn't, you need evidence for that. You need a reason to believe that. But if you just say, I don't believe you, it doesn't matter that elephants exist and books exist and shelves exist and blah, blah, blah. It doesn't matter how much scientific possibility there is for anything. You don't believe it because you don't have any evidence saying that you should believe it. And that's how you treat everything, right? So we're doing the exact same thing for God. I don't have any reason to believe that God exists. I don't have any evidence for a spirit. I don't have any evidence for a supernatural world. I don't have any evidence for heaven, any of that. I'm not saying those things definitely don't exist. I would need evidence to say that. I'm just saying I don't believe you until you show me something to believe. I don't believe you. I'm doing the exact same thing you just did with the elephant that is definitely behind my bookshelf. Do you understand?
I understand, but the reason you don't believe is not because there's no evidence of it.
Yes, and I don't believe in spirits, and I don't believe in souls, and therefore I'm not afraid of the so-called spiritual suicide that you're talking about, because I don't think that's real. And also, as we just explained with Amanuel and everything, even if you could prove to me that the God of the Bible is real, and that I have a soul, and that talking about God is a bad, and all that, if you prove that was actually a thing, I would still be right here on this show doing the exact same job I'm doing now, because that God would be evil, and I will not be subject to an evil God.
So it's not whether God is it or not, it's whether God is good or not, right?
No, it is whether he's true or not, whether he's real. That is what we're talking about. But if he was real, we wouldn't be called atheists anymore. I would be the first person to call myself a theist, but I would still be here as an anti-theist saying God is evil. So right now I say God is not true, and also the premise of a God is evil. If God was real, I wouldn't say God is true. I would just say God is evil. I would be doing half of the job, I suppose I'm doing. Anyway, with that,
yes, I don't have a lot to say. I just said one more thing that you probably haven't heard about.
I bet you I have.
Atheism is the result of a mental illness.
Yeah, we have heard that before, and it's a really shitty, weird thing to say. We just went out of our way to explain that people who believe in God aren't mentally ill, that they are just abused and have been brought up with a horrible belief that they believe is a good thing. We gave your camp extreme benefit of the doubt and compassion and empathy, and here you are just being an asshole because the call didn't go your way. So with that, we're going to move on. But thanks so much for calling in and giving us some content. We will be making money off of that content and using that money to promote atheism.
I mean, somebody once said, why can't you just keep your atheism to yourself? You know, we hear this, especially from the believers. Why do you have to be so vocal? Yeah. And it's such a bizarre thing to say, because if I turn around and I say, well, why do you have to speak about your value system? Right? Or can't you just be quiet about Christianity? They're offended. How dare you? Why in the world would I ever? I'm never going to be quiet about my faith because it's important to me. And I think it's a huge double standard, right? And I'm like, well, if you and I see so much destruction done in the world, you know, when's the last time an atheist knocked on your door spreading the good news of atheism? When's the last time you opened a hotel dresser drawer and saw an atheist book? When's the last time a politician was trying to ram an atheism down your throat or use it to fashion laws or whatever? When's the last time you heard an atheist radio show or watched an atheist TV show on major broadcast networks? Where's the last atheist book? Who takes atheist mission trips? That kind of thing. You know, religion's really been on the offense, and much of what we are doing is just a counter response. We have to do what we do because religion has made it necessary. the assault upon science, reason, and our fellow human beings has made shows like these necessary. We're not a religion, but we are a response to religion, and it's one of the reasons that shows like this exist.
Yep, absolutely. And like that's it. The thing is, man, it's like there's the old cartoon, this little political cartoon of a guy with a big cross beating somebody over the head, saying "liar, sinner, wretch, fink, evil, nonsense." And then the guy takes the cross away from him after being beaten with it 50 times and is about to break it over his knee. And the religious guy goes, "Hey, let's have some respect here. Come on, like what's wrong with you?" And like that's the thing, man. Like I said earlier, I live within double-digit churches within walking distance of my house. I see people walking around all the time with crosses around their necks, crosses on their shirts, cross tattoos. I personally see a cross as a hate symbol. It is a symbol that offends me. It makes me uncomfortable and unhappy. It makes me feel unsafe. I don't like it as a symbol. The phrase "Jesus loves you," I think, is a hideous, hurtful, cruel thing to say, even though I know that the people saying it think that it's very kind and charitable and generous and welcoming. I have these beliefs about Christianity and the symbology of it, and I generally keep them to myself. I don't go to these churches and tell them that they're offending me. And yet, guess who comes knocking on my door at least once a week to ask me to come over here and forgive all my sins of me living the way that I live and telling me that I'm going to burn in hell? It's not atheists. It's the churches all around me. And like, that's just, I've been accused of evangelizing on this show. Yes, you're right. I forced these people to call in and wait on the line for an hour and a half so that they could ask questions and talk about their beliefs in front of thousands of strangers, and I can give my opinion on a call-in show that nobody has to watch. That is the same thing as evangelicalism. You're absolutely right.
One thing that that people need to understand is I think we have a higher opinion of the believers who call, many of the believers who call, than they have of themselves. When they're like, "I'm not worthy and I do deserve hell. I was born a sinner." We're the ones who are saying, "You know what? I think you've got more value than that. I think you're worth a hell of a lot more than that." I think we actually see many believers better than they see themselves, and I hope they realize that whenever we're speaking to them.
Absolutely. It's you're not perfect. You're gonna make mistakes. You're gonna fuck up. You're gonna hurt people. Your job is to try to do that as little as possible and try to make it right when you do. And that's part of the ride. That's the beauty. That's part of the beauty of it, of growing up. Like you are not evil. You are not sinful. You are not wicked. You are not broken. You are not sick. You are not diseased. You are not a plague upon this earth. You are perfectly weird just the way you are. And imperfections are part of that perfection. And I wish people could take a little bit of that weight off of their back of feeling that they deserve to be tortured. No, any person who would torture somebody for not living up to their moral standard, they are the sinner here, not you. So God may judge you, but I promise you his sins outnumber your own. With that, we are about at the time when the show is supposed to end, and we have a lot of stuff left to do. Are you cool with going a little overtime here?
I am. If your producers are, I don't want them to cuss me, but I'm all yours, man.
They told me that we have 1 million calls left on the line, and we should keep going if you're down for it. So I'm down to go for another 30 minutes. If
I've got another half hour in me. I'm going to spend there. I'm going to take my lady out on a date. On a Sunday night, but you got me for a half hour, man. If I can serve the show, let's do it.
Okay, so really quickly, let me read a couple of announcements, and then we'll read the super chats, and then we'll do like one more call, and then we'll call it good. Quick announcements for everybody who wants to know. We have an AXP live stream that's going 24/7 all the time. If you've ever thought to yourself that you really, really wish you could just see a lot more of this on the internet, guess what? We got you covered. So watch in anytime, any day. Just tune in. You can experience a constant stream of our shows, clips, specials from the over 26 seasons of the Atheist Experience. You can also just watch the channel and just find your favorite shows and clips you want to see. Go to tiny.cc/AXPTV, join in all the fun. And then also the question of the week that I wanted to reiterate, because we talked about it briefly at the beginning, but want to throw it out there again. The prompt of the week is change one word or phrase of any Bible verse to completely change its meaning. Leave your comments in the chat down below, and we will pick our top 3 favorites for next week, and we'll read those on air. And then also, we have, oh my glob, just all sorts of super chats here. Let me see if I can find them, the top of them. So we ended here. We've got John Doan sent $4.99. Oh, frick. They posted another one and it shot my thing back down to the bottom. John Doan sent $4.99. Russell's Teapot. Forrest sounds like Dormut. Just dropped the T. I don't know what that means. Forrest, thank you for the my wallpaper. I don't know what that means. Seth, nice to meet you. Oh, I know what they're talking about. Seth, nice to meet you at the in Arizona at the convention. I know what they're talking. They're talking about the last time I was on with Jim Barrows and we took a little picture with the teapot. Yes. $20 from Too Young to Feel This Old. I feel that. Forrest, thank you for what you do. Seeing educators like you in our generation makes me feel so much better about how my kids' future education will turn out. You and Seth are doing important work and we, here and on your channels. Thank you very much. It's very kind of you. Alice Richards sent 50 of their hard-earned dollars. Just because you both are two of my favorite hosts, it would tickle me to have Forrest say my name. Alice Richard. Yeah, put that as your ringtone. $5, Madeline Mary O'Hare and Christopher Hitchens, born on 4/13. Who made it 223? Let's poll to change it. I get what you're saying now. You're saying change Atheist Day to the birthday of Madeline Mary O'Hare and Christopher Hitchens. That's cool. $20. P-Gal is better than everyone. Transport chain is better than what are we saying? Better than AT equals metabolic fuel. I'm sure that made sense in the comment. I am having a hard time understanding it here. Oh, I know what they're saying. Okay, they're talking about electron transport chain as opposed to ATP as a metabolic, and they're saying that P-Gal is better than all of them. I get it. It's a biochemistry joke. Gotcha. That was from Jeffrey Ritchie, I believe. Marcia Everett sent $5 to say the same thing. Again, I guess that got double posted here. Oh, and then there's Katie saying sorry for the double post. Thank you, Katie. Brian Ortiz sent $5. If I lack energy, I listen to Forrest for energy and motivation. When I'm down and hopeless, I listen to Seth's silky voice on the tube or audiobooks. What was the one that you got recently? Honey-Coated Thunder?
I was Andrew Seidel with the Americans United for Separation of Church and State, and he actually said my voice was honey-coated thunder, and I said I'm putting that shit on a business card tonight.
I got called a smiley middle class know-it-all, and that is now on my business card.
No, I like that. It's got a good ring to it.
We got a super sticker. I don't know what the difference is from J Baccarat 100, a new channel member, sent $5. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Marcia Everett sent $2. Ask Emmanuel, what day is the Sabbath? Can you tattoo? Right? So many rules. Marcia Everett also sent $2. Why would you want to be, why is it good to be worshipped? It's immature to need that. I agree entirely. Pat in the chat sent $5.99. Hey, considering that Eve was made from Adam's side or rib, she would have his DNA. Wouldn't that make her the first transgender woman? I like to build on that as well. You know, Jesus only would have had Mary's DNA. There's no way he would have gotten a Y chromosome from Joseph. So again, Jesus would have had to have been trans. Also, Jesus was all about, he was so perfect. He never had sex and everything. So like he was ace. Jesus was asexual. That's the A in LGBTQIA. No matter how you slice it, he would have been flying a pride flag. Pat in the chat sent $1.99. Love the show. You guys are great. Hope all is well. It is. Super chat from Swobear, $10. Love the show. I hope to attain the level of education Seth and Forrest have someday to be able to challenge the religious on harmful beliefs and promote science. I promise you, you can be so much smarter than both of us combined. You will learn so much more than us. Greater than these, you shall do. It's $4.99 from John Doan. I will send $100 in the chat if y'all just block Emmanuel from wasting time with him when we can hear from someone who is open to listening to the host. Pretty sure he's blocked over on the Line Network for that exact reason, because he just doesn't ever acquiesce to anything anybody's saying. He'll just move on to the next talking point. Siggy Sigwald sent 666. I don't know what ARS is. Someone will tell us in the chat. I'm going to call them Armenian dollars, and I'm going to be wrong. Love Forrest and Seth. Hail Sagan. Thank you very much. Oh, it's Argentinian pesos. They actually put it in the chat right under that, and I just wasn't reading it. Thanks from Argentina. Marcia Everett sent another $2. Best way of changing behavior than punishment. Better ways of changing behavior than punishment. Agreed, as a teacher. RC Deschenay, a member of 2 years, sent $2. Roland the Goblin is a friend to us all. Love that as well. And then the last one that we've got here is Bridget and Dare, sent $5. So glad to catch you live for the first time. Love you both. Stay awesome. We love you as well. Bridget, thank you for sending so many of your money to us today.
No, I think that's a lovely sentiment. Thank you.
Just cranking through as many of those.
It's good to be among friends. You know, it's nice to be in a place where, you know, it's weird. It's funny. I'll just digress.
Yeah.
But, you know, coming out of FM radio, it was like, you know, your audience is within the reach of a transmitter signal, usually, you know, 50, 100 miles, maybe. But in the age of doing broadcasts on the internet, we have connection, we have friends and family, we have community, and it can cross international lines. You know, we have people all over the world sending goodwill, and that's not lost on people like me and Forrest. We, you know, a lot of times when we're here behind a microphone broadcasting and it goes out, we don't often get that ping back. You know, we're like, does it matter? Do people, do they benefit? Does it help?
Mm-hmm.
And so whenever we hear those words of encouragement, it's a tremendous gift back to us. And it helps keep us going as content creators and as admins of communities. And I think we're all doing what we can where we can. But Bridget, thank you, and everybody else for the kind word. That's lovely.
It really does. Like it takes a toll on you as a creator. You just you put your heart and soul out there all the time, and the whole internet sees it, and you get all sorts of love and hate and everything in between. And sometimes it starts to feel hopeless that you're putting everything you can out, and you get a bunch of followers, but you don't see any changes, and you don't see the things that you want out there. You have to ask the same questions over and over and provide the same answers over and over and teach the same lessons over and over, and it gets exhausting. But like, seriously, as Seth said, every time we get love and support from fans, every time we have people send us a little hello, it doesn't necessarily have to be money. If you can't afford to do it, that's totally fine. Every time we get just somebody pleasant just sending us a little note, just saying nice things. I love every time I visit my PO box. You know, I go out and get just letters from, you know, people who say like this thing that you did was inspiring, that thing was helpful. That it means the world to me, seriously.
It's also a nice, I think, a distraction from the others, the ones that start, why do you hate God? Yes. That's always nice to be able to have something to counter those.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
absolutely.
Or I get the ones that say, I have proof, and then they, you know, they'll tag an Alex Jones video or something. I mean, you just never know what you're going to get. Or I think my favorite lately is, will you read this 400-page apologetics book and get back to me? I think that's always fun. Yeah.
I got one of those that actually was not, because I've had that a lot. Yeah. You read this book or watch this documentary or you know, whatever else. And here's this one scientist who disagrees with you on this one thing. Go read their entire literature and then to figure out, okay, here's the other ones that disagree with them. Yeah, but here's this one. You know what I mean? Yeah. I had one person, and I have their letter around here somewhere. They wrote me a very long letter, detailing out their life of growing up in religion and growing up at going to creationist schools, and how my content on YouTube about biology had helped them understand evolution that had been denied to them. And they actually sent me, it was a very nice letter. And I have it around here somewhere. If I had it nearby, I would give you a shout out personally to that person, because it's really, really kind words. But they also sent me their Understanding Evolution textbook, what every Christian parent should know and share with their family, exposing the fallacies of Darwinism through science. And I actually I haven't had the time to start it yet. But it's not a difficult book, it looks like. And I actually do want to make a video about it.
No, I've done that. Look, this is a true story, since we're going over, and I'm making your producers hate my guts. But, you know, my evangelical mother has for 15 years been, praying for the prodigal to come home. And it's been, kind of heartbreaking to see it all. But I failed them and they failed me. And if only Jesus would come and bring him home, kind of thing. And so my apostasy's been pretty rough on, especially, my father passed away, but Mom, we were at lunch once and I thought, well, this is really pleasant. Look at us being a family. And no one's tried to preach at me. But it couldn't last, because when we were at the parking lot, Mom said, hang on just a second. I've got a gift for you. And I'm like, oh, shit. And she goes to her car and she brings back a book by apologist Alistair McGrath. It was called The Dawkins Delusion. Essentially, it was why an evolutionary biologist is totally full of crap. And gosh, this must have been 10 years ago. And I said, all right, fine. I said, fine. I went ahead and accepted the book. And I said, what's the gist? What's the book actually saying? And she goes, well, I haven't actually read it.
But you need to.
But it's going to help you understand why evolution's wrong. And I thought this is a great example, because many people do the same thing with the Bible. Right? Mm-hmm. Here, read the Bible. It's true. Do you know what's in it? Not so much, but I know it's true. And I think this is very common in apologetics, especially. Yeah. Anyway, forgive the digression.
No, you're fine. You're fine. You're talking about my producers hating me. Actually, the producer just put in the chat over here, the crew chat, take one more call so that Seth can go when he needs to. And then I'm to finish the super chats and whatnot. And they said I can even continue some calls if I want. And that's great, because we actually have several people here who have science questions and biology questions.
Yeah, you sounded like you were winding down, Forrest. I mean, you were, just saying.
I might do a little more, because like this, I do have to go. I told them before I couldn't do an after show because I've got like I've got a bunch of editing to do before I leave for VidCon. Go see me at VidCon. But like there's a couple on here. One person wants to know about something about gender. One person has something to do about Yahweh being written in the DNA code. I wanted to get to that one.
No, I got to jump in on this. This is because Dr. Stephen Meyer likes to do this, right?
Does he?
This idea that there is actually proof, a signature in the cell, and at the cellular level, we see the evidence of God's handiwork. And I'm like, oh, that's awesome. God has now hidden proof of his presence and handiwork until human beings could develop the technology to see at the cellular level, right? Everybody else pre-microscope was hosed.
Yeah, awesome. All these people go to hell for lack of evidence and not believing. But in like 2003 years, somebody's going to make something really cool. Yeah. Also, I talked all that good shit, and both of those callers have dropped because they were waiting for a long time. Just to answer the one claim, though, before we quickly take this last call, is the caller I saw on the screen, it said they were asking for a response to the claim that the word Yahweh is written in a code in our DNA. And I've heard this over and over recently. Actually, it's becoming, this is one of those that kind of makes the rounds and becomes popular every now and then. The claim is that there are sulfur bridges in our DNA, and these sulfuric bridges occur at like in a sequence of like 5, 7, 5, 20. I forgot what exactly it is. And those letters in the Hebrew alphabet are Yod, Hey, Vav, Hey, and therefore this recurring sequence of sulfur in our DNA spells out Yahweh over and over and over. And there's a few things that I would say about that. I hope that caller's still listening. Well, a few things. Number one, there is no code that spells Yahweh. That would be immensely helpful if such a thing exists, because genetics is tough, and nailing down exactly where a gene is. If you could be like, oh yeah, this gene is right after the 15th Yahweh on chromosome 3, that would be amazing. You know what I mean? But like, there's no such code. And the reason why there's no such code is because there is no regularly repeating sulfur bridge code. So the code doesn't say Yahweh because the code doesn't exist. There is no regularly repeating sulfur bridges. And the reason why there's no regularly repeating sulfur bridge code is because there are no sulfur bridges in DNA. And the reason why there are no sulfur bridges in DNA is because there isn't fucking sulfur in DNA. Your DNA is made of carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, oxygen, and phosphorus. I'm trying to think here just off the top of my head. I'm 99% sure those are the only 5 atoms, the only 5 elements in your DNA, period. You can sometimes on a non-bonding oxygen on the DNA backbone, because the DNA backbone is held together by what are called phosphodiester bonds, which are these oxygen-oxygen bonds between oxygen and phosphorus. If you have a non-bonding oxygen on the outside of the DNA, sometimes one of those can be replaced by a sulfur. In weird, rare occurrences, there are papers about it, that can sometimes happen. That's it. A sulfur bridge is a sulfur connected to another sulfur. It's like an ester.
Hang on. I got to text my wife. Sorry, I will be a little late. Forrest went off on a goddamn tangent about sulfur ridges in DNA. Okay, all right.
I wanted to answer
love
that
you.
one. I'm so
love
sorry.
you. Okay. Sorry, I'm taking her out to Cracker Barrel after we're done.
The elephant
so I have to let her know that, you know, when Forrest gets off on a tangent, you know, you might as well just buckle up, have a seat, have a drink. So, no, we're good. I'm covered. I'm covered.
We're gonna take the last call, and then we're gonna end the show. Is because that the two calls that I wanted to take at the end dropped. So we'll take the last call, and then I'll do the super chats. You don't have to stick around for it. The last call is from Robert, pronouns he, him in Georgia. Wants to talk about the empty tomb. Robert, you're on Atheist Experience. How are you doing?
Howdy, how's y'all's days going?
Really good. Thank you for waiting over 2 hours to ask us this question. It's very kind of you.
Yeah, no, I'm loving the vibes. Y'all are just awesome. A lot of positive energy. I really appreciate it. I don't know if y'all, like, if anything was written down about this, but I'm kind of in between, like, a theist and an atheist perspective right now. A little backstory. Up until I was about 15, I was Christian, raised in, you know, relatively conservative Christian household in rural Georgia, blah, blah, blah. About the time I turned 15 or 16, I started watching the Atheist Experience a lot, actually. And this was back when I think Matt Dillahunty was on here a lot, like every week or so. And that actually started my deconversion process into atheism. And for the last 4 or 5 years, you know, I've been pretty staunch agnostic atheist, haven't really questioned that. But recently I got into a debate with one of my friends who used to be an atheist back in high school, but has now turned into a Catholic. And we started talking about some narratives in the Bible, you know, the prophecies in Daniel, which we know Daniel was written in like 164 BC because, you know, prophecies are accurate before then, and then they're just, you know, shit afterwards. So, but we got to talking about the empty tomb narrative. And I started doing some research into oral history, oral tradition, and things of that nature because I remember watching one of, correct me if I pronounce his name wrong, but Bar Ehrman. I remember watching one of his lectures, and he was talking about how oral tradition is, you know, it's unreliable. The first Gospels that we have, or rather, whenever we think the Gospels were written, was between, you know, 70 to 100 AD, about, you know, 4 decades after Jesus died. The earliest thing that we think was even written in terms of Christianity was, you know, I think the letter to Thessalonians, which was like 20 years after Jesus died. But I guess, like, my question is, like, what are y'all's thoughts on the empty tomb narrative? Like, how likely is it that, you know, you think the empty tomb was fundamental to, like, early Christianity? And, you know, even if so, I know that doesn't necessarily prove that there's God, but it's something that's just kind of been bothering me because the more I think about it, the more I'm like, I just don't see why, you know, any of these people would be encouraged to really to lie about something like this, you know, given the fact that, you know, Christianity was a very small religion. Like, it was very likely that they were to be persecuted and or killed for their beliefs. So I just wanted to get y'all's opinions on this.
Seth, take us home.
Well, you know, I struggle a little bit with why do we think anybody would lie about it? What would be their motivation? And, you know, I think what would be the motivation? Did I understand you correctly, Robert, when I heard that?
Yeah, you got it.
Yeah. Well, I think why would someone be motivated to write down the myth of Perseus? You know, why would someone be motivated to write down the myth of Muhammad and the winged horse that flew up into the heavens? You know, I mean, we can speculate about motivation, but I think the larger question is there any real reason to believe it? And I think that's conversation starts with an examination of the Gospels. And if you want to start with the empty tomb story, that's terrific. because the Gospels actually disagree in all of the books about the logistics of that story. In fact, if you read them, not in a linear way, but if you read the empty tomb stories side by side, you will find that they are written absolutely differently. They contradict, they actually negate each other. There was Mary, or there was Salome, there was Mary Magdalene, and then there was three, and later there was totally conflicting accounts because the Bible, the Gospels don't even agree with each other. So beyond the idea that we're going to accept a supernatural resurrection by a deity that died for our sins, all of these claims requiring meeting a burden of proof, we have to say, if the Bible can't even agree on the logistics, the specifics, the characters of the story itself, how reliable would the Bible be? So I don't think the question is who would ever make this up. I think, does it make sense? Is there any evidence for it? And if the Bible is absolutely inerrant and God's perfect truth, why doesn't the Bible agree with itself on this one story, let alone all of the others? That's my 2 cents.
I see. Yeah, I've been kind of debating with myself about this too, for the same reasons. Because, like, you know, in Mark, it's a very simple account. It's, you know, he's buried in a tomb, and I could be wrong on this. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you know, two women come by, they see that it's empty, and they run away. And then, you know, Mark 16:9-20 is just a later edition. It's not actually in the original manuscripts, but you know, it starts to get slightly more embellished and more embellished as time goes on. And that's something where, you know, to myself, I've been like, this is evidence that this is, you know, this is clearly a legend. But at the same time, like, you know, you were talking about why would someone invent the myth of Perseus? Is that who you said?
I just brought up a mythological character at random. Yeah.
Yeah. And I guess, like, what makes them different to me, and this, again, is not necessarily evidence for God, but what makes them different to me is it would seem like there wasn't much of a threat of persecution for coming up with those narratives, whereas, you know, Christianity was not, the extent of persecution was not as severe as a lot of people, you know, think it was, but it was prevalent. It was something that happened. And
well, doesn't some of this speak though to my God is bigger than your God, right? We saw the polytheistic religions, and then we saw, you know, each deity became more and more powerful, and then you had the virgin birth narrative, which makes them even more supernatural, and then we began to hone it down. Well, now Yahweh can defeat all of the other gods. We look at the 10 Commandments. Thou shalt have no other gods before me, which tells us that there were other gods apparently, and Yahweh trumped them. And then we had Christianity becoming the law of the land. I mean, there's all these political dynamics at play, but I think, wow, they were really oppressed. Therefore, maybe there was something there. I understand the spirit of what you're saying, but it still doesn't mean that it was authentic, truthful, or that it really makes any logistical or even moral sense.
Okay, I understand. I guess the other question I had about, and it relates to the empty tomb narrative, but you know, the resurrection narrative, I believe there's differing accounts. I know Paul says there's, like, you know, 500 and something people who saw Jesus, and some of them are alive and some are dead. It's mentioned nowhere else in the Gospels. But there seems to be some consistency around the fact that the 12 disciples, they all at least had claimed to have seen a risen appearance of Jesus. And I'm aware that post-bereavement hallucinations, I think is the term for it, they're a thing. It's, you know, people, when someone that they love or a leader that they love, when they die, they have this tendency to see hallucinations or have these very lifelike events after they die, and they think that they actually see them. And the rates of this happening are, like, you know, 30 to 60% from what I could find. And for 12 people or more, I'm not exactly sure on the biblical accounts of exactly how many people saw Jesus post-death and or, you know, theoretical resurrection, but the chances of that are, you know, like 1 in a million to 10 million, if I did the calculation correct, if the odds of that are like 30%. So I guess, like, what my question is, like, is there a valid reason to assume that, not necessarily is this not true, but do we think that they're lying about whether or not they saw God or they saw Jesus post-resurrection? Do we think that that is accurate?
I have to jump in one more time, mostly because I know Forrest is going to probably be on the air till this time next week, and I want to jump in with my final thought.
We have a show tomorrow. I have to do that instead.
Well, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John were not written by Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. In fact, I think it's Mark has 2, possibly 3 authors, none of whom we really can verify who they were. The earliest gospel, I think, written in 79 CE. This was long decades after the alleged death, crucifixion, and resurrection of Jesus Christ. So these were not eyewitness accounts. This is, even if it was reporting, which we do not know that it was, it would have been someone told someone, or whatever. We haven't even nailed those down. And so, eyewitnesses, that's a problematic word. We have no reason to believe there were eyewitnesses. And, even Bible scholars go through and reverse engineer the Gospels, and they see a litany of problems with the account. On top of that, we have the realization that Christ was not the first dying and rising God. He wasn't the first God that atoned for sins so that others could receive salvation. He wasn't even the first God who was crucified. I think it was the God in Nana that was crucified and rose again. And there's a lot of stuff going on here. But I don't think we can start with, wow, a lot of people saw it and the odds of them agreeing or the odds of it being a lie seem shaky. I think the first part of the sentence becomes the problem. A lot of people saw it as simply something we can't verify.
Yeah, I also want to point out that, you talk about the resurrection story as if it's one story. And people professed it and believed it if it was true, but it's also not one story. I just went and just Googled it just real quick because I didn't want to dig through my Bible to find it because I've got my notes are all over in the margins and everything. But who saw it? Who came to the tomb? Matthew says 2 women, Mary Magdalene and the other Mary, came to the tomb. Mark says it was actually 3 women, Mary Magdalene, Mary, the mother of James, and Salome. Luke says that it was 3 women, but it's a different list. It's Mary Magdalene, Joanna, and Mary, the mother of James. John says that it was only Mary Magdalene. Mark says that the sun had already risen when they visited. John says that it was still dark. Matthew says that an angel came and rolled the stone away and then sat on it. Mark says that when the women got there, the stone was already moved and there was a young man sitting to the right of the stone. They saw 2 men by the stone who then suddenly stood before them in dazzling clothing. John says that Mary Magdalene just went there and saw the stone had already been moved and didn't see any people at all. There was nothing else. Then there's, let's see, which disciples went to the tomb? Peter went by himself in Luke. Peter and John went together in John. In Matthew, the 2 disciples, Peter and John believed the reports of the women who went. They didn't go. They disbelieved the reports of the women in Mark and Luke. They didn't believe what the women said, and it says that Matthew did. So there's a million stories here about what happened.
This is what happens when you ask atheist activists about the Bible.
Right? We read the damn
shit
thing
that goes down when you ask an atheist about the Bible, Robert. I blame you for getting them started.
The reason I ask about this is I'm not convinced that the Bible is 100% accurate by any stretch of the imagination. Even if I were a Christian, it's not debatable. There are issues with it. As time has progressed, my parents have kind of become more like liberal Christians, and I actually had a conversation with my mother today about this, and she was talking about how I think it's a very, very personal thing. The only consistency that I really see between the Gospels is Jesus died, was raised. Through faith we reach salvation. She doesn't even believe in stuff like gay marriage being wrong or things of that nature. So I just wanted to ask because I kind of felt like maybe there was some merit to the idea that this narrative has kind of always existed and was very likely to be what the young Christians had experienced, when Christianity was right at its foundation. And maybe that lended some credence to the idea that it was a legitimate resurrection. But I understand that has shaky ground. I'm not definitely not trying to.
There's also the issue of
as I get ready to sign off. I'm feel compelled to leave you with these words. First of all, you started by saying you might be an agnostic. You're not really sure. I don't really care what you call yourself. What's important, Robert, is that you are on your journey and that you are prepared to look at this stuff and ask yourself, does it make sense? And I believe you're honest enough, if it doesn't make sense, to say that. Right? This isn't working. I know this contradicts itself. I'm curious about it. I want to dig deeper. I think that's an amazing place to be. So you can call yourself whatever. I don't give a shit. What I do care about is the fact that you are living your life on your terms. You are curious and you are interested in whether something is true or whether it's not. And wherever that journey takes you, I wish you the very, very best. I think, though, as you look at the Bible and Christianity, there are a couple of things that I think you might take with you. The first is to understand how contradictory and problematic Scripture is, and there is a ton of resources on this. I think you'll start to see one domino click into the other domino, and before you know it, you're not going to be able to hear over the noise of the whole thing crashing down. And secondly, watch how people like your mother have hand-fashioned religion, a type of Christianity that starting to remove all the awful stuff, because they're more moral than many of those verses in the Bible. That speaks to their innate goodness, and good for them. I'd rather a more moderate, progressive, liberal, humanistic Christian than a dogmatic, bigoted, fundamentalist Christian any day. That's a step. Absolutely. That means she's on a journey. And I think life's about the journey. Okay.
Yeah.
I think
that's perfect.
Thank you so much. I appreciate those words. Loving the vibes. Robert. Keep up the great work. And thank you.
No,
thank you, Robert. Take care.
Hope I didn't get too touchy-feely there, but I'm that guy.
It's necessary.
I'm just saying, occasionally I just choke myself up, but I really do. I mean, people will call and they're like, well, am I an atheist, or am I an agnostic atheist, or a Gnostic atheist? And I've seen people chew each other up online for freaking weeks over. I don't give a shit. Labels are helpful.
Yeah.
But the most important thing is, man, you're taking your journey on your terms. You refuse to be spoon-fed this stuff. You want to go out and discover whatever's real.
Yep.
And if you're there, great. I think that's a massive and critical first step. And so in that way, Robert really encourages me. Continue that journey. Stay skeptical, stay curious. And the first time somebody says this over here is sacred and it's off limits, say, congratulations. That is now at the top of the list of things I'm going to challenge, and good for you.
Absolutely. I actually think that's a great way to end. I was going to take a couple more calls about like the Sulphur Bridge and all, but they've already dropped. So unfortunately, that'll be the last call that we do for today. We do have the super chats
because
left.
You've exploded their brains when you were speaking about it a few minutes ago.
I
Literally,
get so excited and I just overload people.
Boom,
I dump on it. Yeah. Then of course, and then all the other biologists out there are like, yeah, but you didn't talk about this stuff, and I'm like, I know, right? It's so exciting. We got Snuff Hoover sent $20. Oh my glob, the thing is moving. No, Snuff Hoover sent $5 to say Forrest is a treasure to humanity. Hope to see you and Seth on again soon. We'll be on Skep Talk tomorrow night. Go watch us over there. Siggy Sigwald sent 666 more Argentinian pesos to say another 666 Argentinian pesos to hear Forrest say Hail Sagan. Darian Gross said $5, just broke ChatGPT with questions about Bible contradictions. It is satisfying, but remember, it's an AI. Its job is to do the thing. You can ask it for proof of flat earth. It will do it. So don't rely on that as proof of your ideas. Then we've got Me and My Human sent $19.99. Thank you so much for that. All that you do. Keep up the great work, both educating and entertaining. $4.99 from Norval Rogers. I'm the caller about Yahweh and the DNA. I hung up because I thought my space could be better used to take another call. I'll call back when Forrest and Seth are on. I hope I answered your question, but again, if not, call in tomorrow. And then we've got Rosie Raid, a new channel member, sent $2.20 from Canada. In the Orca versus Yachts war, where do you stand? I don't know what that means. I'm assuming maybe orcas are getting hit by boats. I'm always on the side of not humans, so like definitely orcas on that one. But I don't know what it is. Maybe it's some football team or something like that. And those are all the super chats. That's the end of the thing. It is now safe to turn off the show. So with that, Seth, thanks so much for coming on and hanging out and doing a show with us today. It was a lot of fun.
No, it was a pleasure to be invited. Thanks for letting me sit in the sandbox with everybody, and to all of our viewers and listeners, may the Lord bless you and keep you and make his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you and all that stuff. No, thanks for having me, man. It was a real pleasure.
This is a great show. I love you and I can just talk forever. And so this is definitely a less productive show in terms of calls, but a much more enjoyable show in terms of hosting. It's a lot of fun. With that, I'm Forrest Valkai. That's Seth Andrews. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for our mods and our call screeners and the crew. Can we get the crew up on the screen really quick before we wrap up? Just say hello. Everybody wave. It'll take a second. And there they are. Love them all very much. Thank you guys for all that you do. And thank you guys out there in the internet for watching everything that we do. Have an awesome rest of your day and never stop learning.